Good afternoon. It's the 16th day of March, 2021, and today's segment is going to be on transitioning from local law enforcement, whether you're a police officer in a city, a deputy sheriff, a state trooper, to federal law enforcement. And I suppose it's a topic that is there's a lot more interest in it right now because in many major metropolitan areas, being a state and local or a local police officer, you may have an inhospitable political climate. That's probably the most politically correct way I can put that. So, what I'm going to talk about, first of all, my experience, because I did it, and then secondly, some of the considerations. Okay. For those of you who aren't aware, after I graduated college, which was back in 1984, ancient history, I had military service and I had an application out with the DEA. But of course, the DEA hadn't called me yet. It takes a year and a half to 2 years to get hired by the DEA, then and now. It's a real slow process. Don't expect, you're going to get a call on, apply on Friday and get a call, show up Monday. It doesn't work that way. They're really slow, and they've never really improved despite promises to improve. So in the meantime, I had other applications out, and one of the applications I had was with my local sheriff's department, the DuPage County Sheriff's Department in Wheaton, Illinois, and I was hired as a deputy sheriff in 1984. And of course, as a new deputy sheriff, I had to start in the county jail because unless you're politically connected, which trust me, I'm not, that's where you go. That's where the vacancies are, and that's where I went. And first 6 or 7 months there, I just worked in the jail. I hadn't even been to an academy. And then they sent me to the academy, which was 10 weeks long, the Illinois Police. It's actually the Cook County Sheriff's Academy in Maywood, Illinois. Then I came back to the jail, and all this time the DEA was processing me. By processing, I mean, going through the various hiring processes, the polygraph, the psychological, the medical exam. But I didn't think they were going to hire me. I mean, why would they hire me? Now I didn't know a lot about veterans' preference, that they had to hire me because I'm a preference eligible. And I also had a pretty good GPA in college, but I didn't figure I got no chance for them, right? I mean, that's for a very high level agency, and I'm just an average person, being as humble as I am. But at any rate, after I finished the academy, my watch commander called me in and said that the FBI, which was conducting the investigation, because at the time DEA and FBI were going to be merged, that they had called and that they were doing a background investigation on me, and he wanted to know had I applied, and I said, not to the FBI, but I did apply to DEA, and he said, well, he would give me a good recommendation, and he did, and the rest is kind of history. In August of 1985, I got a call from DEA headquarters saying, we're offering you a job as a GS7. You'll report to Chicago. We have no idea where you're going to go after that, but you're going to report on September 1st, and then we'll send you to the academy on November 3rd of 1985, and your academy will last till January 31st, 1986. And from there, you can be sent anywhere in the continental U.S. as a initial assignment. You sign a mobility agreement. Now, was this a good move for me? Absolutely. Was it a possible move for me? Absolutely. Why? Number one, I was single. Number two, I didn't own a house. Number three, I had a car, but it was a broken down junk car. But I bought a new car when I got out of the DEA FBI Academy because I needed a car to get to Florida. My girlfriend and I, now my wife and I, have 35 years as of yesterday. We got married right before I reported to Miami, which is where they sent me. And of course, all we had was the car, our stuff in it. Your first move, the government does not pay for your move, okay? So if you're hired in New York and they want you to report to Nogales, Arizona, you got to get there on your own when you finish the academy. Now, subsequent moves, they do pay for, so that's something you might want to consider. But, certainly, every other move that I had, from Miami to El Paso to Maine, Maine to Washington, the government picks up the cost of the move. So for that aspect, I didn't have a lot of time invested, obviously, in the sheriff's department. didn't have a lot of capital invested in the sheriff's department. So this was a good opportunity for me, no question about it. What about you? That's really the question. If you are a state and local police officer and you're looking to go federal, what is your best option? Well, it depends. I wish I had an easy answer, but it depends. What are your qualifications? What are you interested in? Now, right now, the easiest federal jobs to get. So let's say you're a police officer on, I'm sure no one would want to leave the Minneapolis Police Department, but let's say you were on the Minneapolis Police Department. I can't imagine why anyone would want to leave, a wonderful agency like that. Or the Chicago Police Department. Why would anyone in their right mind want to leave the Chicago Police Department? I mean, it's such a wonderful working environment, right? I'm being very facetious. It's a very hard environment for the men and women who have to work in those agencies. I'm very sorry for them at this point in time. But the easiest federal jobs to get are the easiest federal jobs to get. Okay? We'll speak first if you do not have a college degree. If you do not have a college degree, what you're looking at principally, the easiest job to get right now would be the United States Border Patrol. And that would be the job that is most like police work. Now, what are the plus sides to it? Well, you get out of wherever you're working. So you're going to move from, you'll be out of the New York Police or Chicago Police or whatever department you're in, Minneapolis Police. What are some of the downsides to it? Well, number one, you're going to go away for a long academy. And if it's the Border Patrol, it's Artesia, New Mexico. It's a long academy. It's an arduous academy. And if you're not in your 20s, you might have a little bit of a struggle with it. And of course, I should say also that there's a maximum age limit of 37 to get into these agencies unless you're a military veteran, in which event you can be 40, or unless you have federal law enforcement experience. But this is mostly for state and local police officers. I'm presuming you don't have federal experience. Another easy job to get right now is the United States Capitol Police. It's an easy job to get. Not anywhere near as arduous, I don't think, as the Border Patrol. As a matter of fact, I know not anywhere near as arduous as the Border Patrol. More of a security type job. Another fairly easy job to get is the United States Secret Service Uniform Division. Okay, now the latter two, the Capitol Police and the Uniform Division, they're primarily located right in this area, which is where I live, which is, they're located in D.C., but, you're going to be living in Northern Virginia, Maryland, D.C. That's where you're going to have to live if you want those jobs. That's where the entry-level positions are. The Border Patrol can be anywhere on the southwest border. What about Customs and Border Protection? Well, every month they do have entry-level vacancies available. Now, those jobs are not so much, again, you're going to be doing, it's a long academy. I would highly recommend it if you don't have a college degree. I think this is a great job for you. It combines the old customs inspector and immigration inspector, and they put them together after 9/11. They call them Customs Border Protection officers. Now, of course, suppose you're a Chicago police officer, you'd like to be a CBP officer, well, and stay in Chicago, which is possible. The problem with it is that the main port of entry in Chicago is O'Hare Airport, and a lot of people want that job. So it's probably not available. I just looked at what is available, and it's actually closed for this month, but most of the jobs are either on the southwest border, they're in Maine, Minnesota, a few in San Francisco. So they're not in places that are in high demand. They have a hard time getting existing employees to transfer to those areas, so they need new employees. So if you want to go to Calais, Maine, let's say. Now, I was in Bangor, Maine for a year as a special agent. There were only 2 DEA special agents in northern Maine, and I was one of them. We had a state and local task force. It was all right, but it's cold and dark, So you can pick have your choice of CBP, either hot or cold, southwest border, Nogales, Arizona, or, one of these places that it's not really in a really high demand. A lot of people don't want to relocate down there. Or up north, and there was also a few entry-level things in Alaska, which I'm sure People are beating down the door to get to a port of entry in Alaska, but over the Canadian border. But so those places are open, but again, you may not want to go there, and there may be a good reason that you don't want to go there. But if you do, remember this: that after a short period of time, several years, you can laterally transfer to a more desirable location, and the government will pay your move because you're already a federal employee. So these jobs are jobs that are good if you do not have a college degree. You do not need a college degree for any of those jobs. Okay, so that would be Customs Border Protection Officer, probably being at the top of the list. Border Patrol Agent, that's going to be Southwest Border for sure. Okay, CBP could be Canadian or Mexican border, or it could be San Francisco, or someplace that nobody just wants to go for whatever reason. And you'll be working ports of entry. The Secret Service, Capitol Police, uniform divisions, it's all here in this area, DC. So if you don't live around here, you're going to have to move here. Okay. Park Police, I don't see any vacancies for them right now. National Park Service, but Yogi Bear, national parks. Those are actually good jobs, but they're not open that much. They're not open that frequently. I'm not going to speak about the Bureau of Prisons because that's more of a corrections job. The marshals are not hiring right now. Now, suppose you have a college degree. Well, if you have a college degree with a high grade point average, 2.9 or higher, then you're eligible to apply, a bachelor's degree with 2.9 or higher, you're eligible to apply for really just about any federal agency. So that includes the DEA, FBI, ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ATF, U.S. Marshal Service. Your chances are much, much better with a college degree. It's almost impossible to get those jobs without a college degree. Now, if you do not have the high GPA, what do? Well, then you have to have several years of investigative experience. And that's the big thing. You have to look at each job's requirement as to how you'll be evaluated, and you have to match your experience, which as a state and local officer would probably mean that you had to spend some time in a detective role. So if you're on the Chicago Police and you're a narcotics investigator, you spent 2 or 3 years in narcotics, you're good for the DEA. Even if you don't have a high GPA, you're good. Or if you worked in the state investigative agency, the IBI, Illinois Bureau of Investigation, or any of these state agencies that have investigative authority. And it doesn't have to be narcotics. It could be any kind of investigations, but that would help you immensely. Either that or a high GPA with a bachelor's degree and just regular police experience. Okay, so you're really looking at 2 levels of agencies. You're looking at the criminal investigative positions, which would include U.S. Secret Service, criminal investigators, which is special agents, the DEA, the FBI, the ATF, Immigration, Customs Enforcement. Okay, those are investigative positions. It's almost impossible to get those without a college degree. But if you do have a college degree and you're on a state and local agency, again, the two ways to get it: high GPA, undergraduate, 2.9 or higher, or several years of investigative experience on your agency. Okay. Now, without a college degree, just plain law enforcement experience, you can get a federal job, a federal law enforcement job. But again, there are jobs that you may not want. Or you may want the U.S. Border Patrol, which is kind of a tough job right now. It's very tough. People are just coming across, turning themselves into Border Patrol agents, so they'd be taken to detention. Many of them are just women and children, and it's a real mess. The whole border thing has gone to crap in the last 60 days. It's really fallen apart from what I understand, from what I've been told. Okay. Customs and Border Protection, great job, but again, the entry-level positions are in places that a lot of people don't want to go. Now, once you have served your time, several years, you can laterally transfer to another location. Okay, so that's good. Certainly, the Uniform Secret Service in D.C. requires a high school diploma. and just some law enforcement experience is great, military or civil. But again, it's here in D.C. The U.S. Capitol Police, same thing. Just a high school diploma, law enforcement experience, but it's here in D.C. The good side to it, on a lot of these agencies, you're not going to have this degree of political interference that you're going to have in state and local agencies. It used to be just the sheriff's departments had a lot of political interference. If you didn't support your local sheriff and you're a deputy sheriff, you were going to be in trouble. But nowadays, I think it's a lot of the police departments are cowed by the demands of political correctness. That's probably the most politically correct way of saying this, or the demands of the woke culture. And you always want to feel that people have your back. That's real important, that your political leadership has your back. And in the federal agencies, it's better, I think, than in the state and local agencies. It's important that you have management that backs you, to me. And it's the first rule that you've always been taught in any military or law enforcement leadership: take care of your people. And now the longer you wait, the longer you've been on a department, the harder it's going to be for you to move from one agency to another, or to move to a federal agency. And the reason for this is manifold. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for it. Number one, you've got time invested in a department. Number two, you've got to go through a whole new academy, which if you're in your 20s, that's probably good. But once you get in your 30s, unless you've been working out, you're going to have a tough time. Number three, your family's going to have to relocate on an unpaid move to somewhere that they may not want to go to. Okay? So those are considerations against it. Considerations for it is, again, number one, the work environment is probably going to be a lot better. Number two, if you get a job like Secret Service or Capitol Police, I mean, who the hell messes with them, really, to be honest with you? And remember this, okay? And I'm staying non-political, but if you protect politicians, the politicians always take care of the Praetorian Guard. What is the Praetorian Guard? It was that unit of the Roman army that guarded the Roman emperor and his family, okay? They were always taken care of. They always had good benefits, and whatever they needed, they had. The legionnaires who were stuck up on the Rhine River or the Danube or whatever, they didn't have it, but the Praetorian Guard, they got it. So, I mean, will you be doing a lot of law enforcement kicking? No, you're not going to be doing that, but you're going to be, your family will be provided for, and you'll probably be sane when you leave, which I can say on some of these state and local departments, you may not be. Or you may just hate getting up and going to work in the morning because you feel you can't really do your job without risking your career. How's that? But here you can do your job and you won't risk your career. But again, the job isn't going to be all that exciting. But maybe if you're in your 30s, you don't care about that anymore. So there's considerations definitely to be made. And they're important considerations. I'm happy. I'm very glad that I took a federal position. In the federal government, I got to live in many different locations. And between my military and law enforcement service, I have seen places that no one else has seen. When I look through my high school yearbook, one thing I note, and I stay in touch with some of my friends on Facebook and that, they tend to stay in that area. Almost all of them have stayed in that same area. They never really left. See, I left when I was 17. I enlisted in the Marines. And since then, I come back, but eventually you'll come back to your home more as an obligation, just to see your mom or your dad. My father was still alive, but your family becomes wherever you're at, So you get a big family throughout the world almost, or throughout the country for sure. So in the military, San Diego, Camp Pendleton, I was aboard ship. And then, in the DEA, I've been assigned at different locations. How many countries have I seen? I've been to Canada, Mexico, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, not as a soldier, but as a DEA agent. Laos, not as a soldier, but as a DEA agent. Thailand, both as a DEA agent and as a member of the military. Singapore, a wonderful place. Australia twice, once as a DEA agent, once as a member of the military. The Philippines twice as a member of the military. Japan just briefly as a member of the DEA, and then twice as a member of the military. Kenya, Africa, as a member of the military. There's no DEA in Kenya, Africa. You really wouldn't want to go there as a DEA agent. And then certainly Guantanamo, Cuba, the Bahamas. I never made it to South America. That's odd. Most DEA agents make it to South America. I never did. And I never made it to Europe, but I will make it to Europe, and I don't care about Antarctica. So there you go. I mean, there's benefits to federal service, military service, federal law enforcement service. If you're a Chicago police officer, you're never going to go to any of those places. Okay? That's just it. And if you haven't been in the military, you're probably never going to see those places. Now, maybe you never want to see them. And that's completely understandable. But if you have a sense of adventure, you do want to see them. So it's a good benefit. It's something you remember for the rest of your life. And it's just good living in different communities. We adopted our son in El Paso. He's of Mexican heritage, but it's just, your family is all over the place then. It's just, you break out of your local community. How's that? That's a good way of putting it. So hopefully you've gotten some insight on this. Haven't rambled on too much. So, I mean, there is a few things, more than a few things you have to consider. If you're a state and local officer wanting to go federal, what job do you want? What are your qualifications? What is your family willing to put up with? What are you willing to put up with in terms of another academy and starting over at the bottom? How much time do you have invested in your agency? Because that's probably going to have to start all over again. You probably take your 401k and roll that over, but I mean, your retirement's going to start over again. So if you're 31 or 32 or 33 and you've been a police officer since you were 21, 22, 23, that's a big, consideration, depending on how good your retirement benefits are. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. If you have been a police officer and have passed the polygraph, I'll tell you right now that the Border Patrol, the Capitol Police, and the U.S., to a lesser extent, U.S. Secret Service Uniform Division are hiring like crazy right now. And the first two, the Border Patrol and the Capitol Police, they have very expedited hiring, probably 90 to 120 days. But again, the problem with it is, as a former law enforcement officer, they may waive the polygraph if you've already had a polygraph with your agency. And that's good, because in the Border Patrol, 2 out of 3 of the applicants fail a polygraph for whatever reason. But so you may want to do that. But again, there's nothing to lose by applying for a job. That gives you an option. And an option is always better than no option. So my advice, apply for those jobs, and then if you decide you don't want it, you just say, I don't want it. But if you do want it, then you take the job, you take the step, and God bless you. You put yourself in the good Lord's hands, and you go through the training and go to the new place, and you have a new career, a new location. Meet very strange and exciting people on the border and detain them and let them go, and while they try to figure out what the hey to do with the border. And if you're in the Capitol Police, you'll be standing there at the metal detector. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator, I didn't recognize you. A humble 1,000 apologies. And it is what it is. But I was there just a few days ago. I went to the Basilica for confession, but they still got this huge fence around it with concertina wire and National Guard with M16s. I mean, it's just a real eyesore. Hopefully they're going to take all that garbage down pretty soon and just hire more Capitol Police, which they are in the process of doing. So again, no agency is perfect. Nothing is going to solve all your problems. Sometimes the best job you've got is the job you've got. But again, sometimes, like if you're on the Minneapolis Police Department, my friend, I sympathize with you. If you're on the St. Louis Police Department, it was a different agency 10 years ago than it is today. It was a different agency 5 years ago than it is today. And a lot of these agencies, the people are looking to get off of it. If you're on the D.C. Police Department, they're looking to get out of it because it's just the mayor's offices and the city councils are not, they don't mix well with law enforcement. That's again another politically correct way of putting it. They're just not, they're not on your side. I'm sorry to say that. You know, they don't care about you too much. They're very, very liberal, and God forbid anything that can be questioned or turned into a bad situation happens, because the press and they will make it a bad situation or make a bad situation much worse. And yeah, so at this point, I wouldn't recommend applying to a major metropolitan police department to an enemy. You know, I don't have any enemies, but I wouldn't recommend anybody apply to Chicago Police, to LAPD, to Dallas PD. And at one time, you know, these were top-notch agencies that people wanted to get on. I wouldn't go there just because of the crap that people are putting up with nowadays. But if you want to, God bless you. You know, but if you're on those agencies, you're looking to go federal, this is what some of the things you should consider. So hopefully this has been useful. If you have any specific questions, leave them in the comments, and God bless all of you. Okay, thanks.